Today's Ask Perf Bytes episode is sponsored by Neotis. Neotis develops NeoLoad, the fastest and most automated load testing tool on the market. Design and maintain load tests 10 times faster than with any other tool, so your performance testing smoothly fits in Agile and DevOps. Learn more at www.neotis.com. That's Neotys.com.
How does garbage collection impact my day? Why can't I have dessert for breakfast? Should I use percentiles or averages? Why do clocks help you? What's up with the number 42? What is the n+1 problem? Can exceptions ever be useful? Why don't developers like me? Why does grandma smell funny?
Ask Perf Bytes.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ask Perf Bytes. I'm your host, Brian Wilson, and yes, the good Agent Cooper finally got out of the Black Lodge. This episode's question comes from me, Brian Wilson. Brian asked Perf Bytes, how can Varnish and Squid cache be helpful both in the general performance of websites and in the current context of the work-from-home situation that we find ourselves in? Well, thank you for your question, Brian. You're welcome, Brian. To help us answer this question, I want to bring on two guests. The first is Mark Tomlinson, the host of Perf Bytes, from whom I first heard this idea of using Squid and Varnish in relationship to the COVID-19 work-from-home context during the first Neotis Pack virtual meetup. Hi, Mark. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Brian. That was a heck of a meetup. They've been doing them like weekly now, right?
Yeah, I had to miss this week's because we were interviewing candidates for position at my work. But cool. The first one was really fun. Yeah. I'm hoping to be on next week's. So if anyone is interested in joining, if they just go to Neotis's Twitter, you can find out when and where it is, and you can join on. It's a big Zoom meeting. Yeah, fun stuff. We have obviously Henrik Rexed from Neotis. You're usually on. James, were you on the one, or actually, haven't people don't know James is here yet? So shh.
Oh, wait a minute! You need to introduce him.
Other people are on. Wilson Marr was on, right?
Yeah.
So
Andy's on there.
Wilson Marr is on the show today. Cool.
No, he was on the Neotis Pack meetup, and you're not even introduced yet. Oh. This is all going to be really hard to edit.
No, it's not getting edited. This is all staying in. It's all
just leave
audio verite.
In. That's right.
Yes. So we have another guest who I'm sure nobody can guess who it is by now. So the topic also came up with my second guest,
Wilson Marr?
James Pulley.
It's Wilson Marr.
Yes. It's James Pulley, the host of News of the Damned. And,
Hello.
And James, if you remember the last episode of Ask Perf Bytes, we were talking about caches, and this came up as well, because that was actually, I think, the same day that I was on that Neotis Pack meetup with Mark. Yep. And we figured it would be a good show, so we have both of you on. So hi, James, and welcome back to the show.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm glad to be back and be able to take advantage of the cachet of your show on Cache.
He's always good. He's always good like that.
I can't believe I paid cash for this.
I'm just going to cash it in.
Actually, I'm really happy to be on the show finally. Since I've been home, I've been doing a lot of woodworking. So an opportunity to talk about Varnish is really great, because I'm at a point in some of my projects where I might be able to
do you like the natural lacquer, where you have to use it with the denatured alcohol, or do you prefer one of the more chemical commercial lacquers?
No, it's a Minwax. I think one ply. Thing.
Oh, cool.
I like it.
Cool.
Yeah. And then, of course, Squid is also a lot of people are doing cook at home for COVID-19. They're learning how to cook.
You've got to debeak them. That's very important. Debeak them.
I never did. Is that what the crunchy part is?
That's the crunchy part. Yeah.
Debeat them?
Beak.
No, the beak.
It looks like a little parrot beak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've thoroughly confused everything now. Thanks for joining Ask at Perf Bytes. See you later, Brian.
Thanks. So before we dive into this, though, let's delay even more with some more stupid banter. And
yes,
Mark, last time I had James on, I had made the mistake of just assuming that deep menacing voice came from James with pitch shift on. But he told me that you actually secured an interview with Satan in order to get that soundbite. And I was just wondering if you can clear the air and, let us know the true and secret origins about where Satan came from in News of the Damned.
Well, actually, Brian, me and the big guy go way, way back before that. But Brian, it's nice that you ask. Ever since Mark and I sat down and put together the first contract
Mark?
I've been able to show up pretty much at will. So.
Oh, you're pretending to be Satan now?
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I mean, I'm not pretending to be Satan. I mean, I can just sort of take over the guy as whenever I want.
See, this is why I'm concerned for Mark. Yeah. That whole multiple personality thing. Yeah.
Well, he's a great mentor, and I'm learning so much about how to make systems fail in the digital realm, sort of digital horror or digital torture, which is something that how many millennia have we been in the underworld? And we really never mastered like socket-based overwhelming of an ASIC. I mean, that's like brilliant. That's brilliant. And to get so many humans like dependent upon each packet is just like, oh my God, like they can't help but hit the submit button and then the refresh button and then refresh. It just gets me.
Broadband must have been a real pain for you then, because I know, people think hell is all like these big fire and everything, but we really know it's like full of a lot of little annoyances, such as like back in the old days of dial-up when you had to wait 1 to 2 minutes for an image to show up on the screen. That must have been the heyday of it. But anyway, it's a very delightful story. Let's get on to the question now. I think we've wasted enough of our listeners' time. Thank you, listeners, for allowing us to have some stupid fun. Thanks. We'll be back.
What?
We'll be back.
Were you guys talking about something?
Yeah. Oh, hey, Mark.
What?
Oh, nice to have you back, Mark. Yeah, we were just about to get into the question about Squid and Varnish, and you said, "Hold on a moment," and we waited for half a second, and now you're back. Oh. I think you just had to cough on the side of the microphone.
Good. Let's talk about caching.
Yes. So
okay.
First there's a few things I want to take with this question. Right. Let's first break down what Squid and Varnish are, and then we can take this into two contexts. Context one is in general, how might companies or web properties use Squid or Varnish, and although we covered a lot of considerations for testing with caching, are there any other areas we might need to consider if testing with Squid and Varnish in place? And then second, let's go into the idea that you brought up on that Neotis Pack meetup, Mark, about how you might be able to leverage either personally or for your company, for your employees, Squid and Varnish, or Squid or Varnish, to make the work from home experience better. So first, let's cover what they are. So I don't know if you each want to take one, split it up, duke it out. Go.
Well, let me talk a little bit about Squid, and James made some great notes in here just talking about Squid is most often people understand Squid as a proxy server. So for security purposes, maybe going between two different domains, two different environments or subnets, or a range of different domains. So you could have sort of a Squid farm managing the routing or proxying of traffic to and from different destinations, rerouting, et cetera, all over the place. And the basic understanding that people have is Squid is my proxy server. But actually, even the domain name for Squid is squidcache.org. It is a caching proxy server. So it can take static content on the fly that keeps getting requested. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you even want to pin it there to say, well, I've got these people on the end of a really slow link somewhere. So I'm going to kind of overnight, I'm going to populate, we've got a corporate HR video, and we've got some new branding, and we've got some other static assets that the offices on the other end of this slow wire, we don't want them to have to wait, when all 25 or 250 of them come on, to get on whatever corporate thing that's happening, like an intranet site. So we're going to cache that information sort of proactively, or even in real time. It'll just, the first person is really slow, but then after that, everyone's really fast. And it's basically local storing in the near site, meaning in your own office, of something that's on the other end of the wire. And the caching, you'll also see this with, say, I want to say like Cisco's web application accelerators. They do caching. Riverbed's another one that I think did a bunch of this. Okay. But they do sort of this, if I don't have to make a round trip across the wire, I'll just go with the local image. That's why waste that route Why waste that round trip across the wire? So the idea that you would cache static, long expires headers doesn't really change that often content. Why go out to the internet to get it if I already have it here? And if there's a popular video or like internal corporate video, or maybe a popular video about, I don't know, some sort of an animal Twitter with like dogs that are now getting in trouble because they knocked over a plant, or, cute goats dancing on a on a thing. Take the goat video and actually cache it on the Squid server locally so that you don't actually hog the corporate network with goat videos. And so that's the thing. Not only can you proxy through Squid, but you can cache as well. And one of the big differences of Squid is you can farm it out and coordinate the management across multiple proxies and multiple domains. And James, I know, knows more than I do about Varnish, but Varnish has a lot of the similar properties and is kind of smaller, maybe more lightweight. James, is that a good way to say
Mark,
it?
you ignorant slut. I don't know what you're thinking and talking about this stuff. Yes. For those of you who are fans of Saturday Night Live, you'll get that.
The OG Saturday Night Live, that is.
Yeah. So,
old school.
Mark, you pretty much nailed it. So most people think of Squid as a web proxy, but we also forget that it really is the foundational technology behind Akamai in many respects.
Yeah.
It came out of MIT, so did Akamai. They run along parallel paths in this case. This ability to multi-proxy different domains and cache them really is the foundational basis for these multi-tenant CDNs that you have sitting out there. When we look at Varnish is more tailored in its approach. So you're looking at maybe a single domain cache. And that single domain cache could be, hey, I'm going to put it right in front of my application. I'm going to put it right in front of the load balancer. And what both of these proxies have in common is they have a scripting language. So you can make some changes on the fly if you want to. But you also have the ability to set your own policies associated with how long you want to cache something. You don't have to respect the cache headers that come through. If you want to just inherit them, you can. But there's a lot of times where the cache headers are set incorrectly by the application owners. I have a great business that all I do is go in and analyze and fix cache headers in many respects. So you could actually set policies that you cache images for so long, that you cache style sheets for so long, that you cache JavaScript for so long. All of the classical fixed assets of a web page, and you could wind up caching, for instance. Squid is the basis for what you see on airplanes when, as a web proxy server, you can set policies to cache Facebook for the duration of a flight.
Yeah. So if you have like a flash news thing comes out and everyone starts surfing Facebook or Twitter or something, you can get a lot of the repeated, at least the static content. You may still have the dynamic content that doesn't.
Oh, sure. Like if someone's checking their mail,
stuff.
The mailbox itself is not going to be cached, but all of the surrounding hoo-ha for the site.
So if you're hitting shared content like news or videos or images and things, they could be retrieved once and then stored on the Squid server running on the airplane.
Absolutely.
Or you could even set, it sounds like you can set like a 5-minute refresh policy on semi-dynamic content. Like if there was, while you were flying,
you can fix sins of content management systems by putting Squid or a Varnish in front of them and setting your own policies for how long the front page is going to live instead of having it to be dynamic for every single user.
Yeah. And there's also, I think, replacement scripting as well in both of these, where if you want to force some minimums, if it detects a certain missed header or something, you can actually have Squid or Varnish replace that to the end client, which is less sophisticated than what we see with, say, a Fastly proxy server that is doing much more content manipulation. But you can do simple things in the headers with both Squid and Varnish.
Varnish has got an entire scripting language inside of it, so you can do some really interesting things. So let's say your domain is not sharded but you want separate servers for images and style sheets and things of that nature, just for load balancing. You could have it come into the Varnish server, and then it can rewrite anything that's an image tag request or a style sheet request based upon, essentially what is the extension coming in, and then redirect that request to a series of servers and then cache the results.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in that respect, Brian, I think it's good to think of more advanced configurations for both Squid and Varnish working, maybe even also working like a load balancer, maybe not a full replacement for a load balancer, but it can also do routing in that respect. One of the other bizarre uses that I've used Squid to do is to inject latency. You can actually deprioritize certain content. You can even inject delays in certain content to mimic slow response times from a backend system. I'm not sure exactly why that they put that in there.
So you could use it.
But it's in there. so you could use it.
For testing, right? So I assume that would come in for good use for external latency controls for testing. But let me just try to boil it down, because I'm looking at the notes that James put in there, and I think I understand the main difference between the two. But let me try to see if I can speak it and kind of get it. In terms of the caching strategy, Squid is going to be used more like a local scenario. So if you, as you mentioned, maybe in your office, you're going to have employees surfing the web, you can have a lot of things stored, cached locally, so that they're not going out on your corporate bandwidth to the internet to grab everything all the time. Or maybe a coffee shop would set one up as they have all the workers going there. And it's something that you're going to, it's basically right outside of your browser cache. You have another cache, which is maybe even a local CDN if you want to think of it. Whereas Varnish is going to be in the same domain or area as the actual web servers themselves. And instead of paying Akamai or CloudFront or anyone else to be your CDN, you're going to have your own private CDN. So instead of serving it from memory from the Apache server or your IIS server, you're just taking it, sticking it one box further out from a cache layer, but private cache.
You can do that, or you can do what Tesla's done, and you can have a multi-tiered cache system that goes all over the world, so that you can have cache nodes on every continent, and then you can have your origin server back in Mountain View.
But it's still it's like a private CDN though.
Yeah, it would be
right.
Private CDN. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can come up with your own sort of architecture according to your office locations and how your personnel are distributed on your private networks, and then manage them yourselves that way. And put a Squid little VM. You can deploy both of these in Docker or in some container system, so they're fairly lightweight. So you could deploy them with updates, manage them as part of the infrastructure, part of the local office setup, so to speak.
And here's one going extreme, just because it's the kind of thing I would think that if I had time, I would play with just to mess around. But let's say you had limited bandwidth or limited transfer data limits at home. Sounds like you could set up a Squid server to cache things locally for all the other stuff, so you're not grabbing all the little images and everything all the time. That would just save bits and pieces here and there.
DirectNet or whatever it's called these days, the little satellite uplink. There's no wire close to him. And Squid is a beautiful solution in that case, because let's face it, most of us are creatures of habit, Mark excluded.
You're on the same 10 websites all day, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You're on the same 10 websites all day. So why keep going and pulling the static components down one by one? Just cache them local. Also, for people that are at home these days, you're probably at home with spouse, children, Netflix, World of Warcraft. Keep going for internet aware people and applications. Yeah. And if you can be more efficient in how you deliver stuff internally to yourself and to everyone else in the house, you can reserve that bandwidth for that 4K stream of Marco Polo.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the idea behind what I mentioned for you're now sequestered at home,
Right.
and everyone's on the internet, and maybe I'm financially strapped, so I'm not going to pay for the upgrade to 200 meg, 400 meg gigabit, network at my house, or like James's uncle, I think he said, has a satellite.
Yeah, he's
other
got
people have
HughesNet,
terrestrial.
the little direct TV satellite thing.
Yeah. Now here's the scoop with that, Brian. Here's
the scoop,
if
Johnny.
you do have people, exactly. If you can actually script Squid and to go out and proactively pull down content on a periodic basis.
Right.
In some cases, we used to do it with cron, so you could cron wget and load, or use curl and load the cache.
Okay.
So if you had things that you didn't want to wait in real time, I've actually had cron jobs, or a little script that goes out and grabs a feed, like an RSS feed, and then just starts loading up, any of the stories with all the images and everything from these entire web pages, and just crawl the first 2 layers of a web page to get the top stories, load them into a folder, and then I'm actually surfing them off of my local Squid machine. But overnight, it's running and getting the latest stuff that I'm interested in seeing in the morning. So it's sort of like a little assistant that goes and gets these things, but not in real time on the network. It's getting them and then storing them. And then I just let them age out. After 3 days, the content gets destroyed. So it's kind of cool that way. But if you've got, I don't think it applies to streaming. I think you're going to see sort of streaming protocols probably not accelerated.
Yeah, there's the commercial version of Varnish that has extra capabilities for transforming multicast streams and unicast to multicast and stuff like that. Like you would see with a big commercial CDN provider like Akamai, you could go unicast to the Akamai node and then go multicast from there. So much more sophisticated capabilities and stuff that's targeted for, running it inside of a cable provider and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you think about, I've been playing a lot recently with like Shoutcast, the Icecast server, and the idea that you have these sort of relay mount points. The one thing I'll say is you can push content through the mount points, and it'll actually, quote unquote, pull down to the closest node to where you're at. So you could actually set up to pull in content off of mount points, and you're still hearing it, quote unquote, or seeing it n number of seconds or even minutes behind the live stream. But that's kind of what you see with Akamai. They're accelerating it because they're sort of meshing you into this sort of mount point stream relaying kind of thing. It's different than, hey, if you've ever watched simulcast and you're a few seconds behind what you're seeing on the television, but it's coming out of the radio 2 seconds later, or something like that. Sometimes it's the other way around. But that's the difference.
Would be extremely beneficial. So you think of Tesla. Tesla uses it for broadcasting updates, for cars and things of that nature. Let's say you wanted to do training all around the world. If you had a CDN node built with Varnish in every continent or every market that you were looking at in some sort of data center, you could actually reduce your load on your video server broadcast-wise by broadcasting to your nodes, and then from there your end customers could pick up the training material. So it would be much easier to support a worldwide audience if that's what you were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Another way to think about that work at home person, Brian, that I was mentioning.
Yeah.
As opposed to your normal productivity, like connect into an email and surf the web, get through some web portals. Maybe if you're in IT, you're maybe working through Jira or development or Confluence wikis, SharePoint, and that kind of stuff. There are certain kinds of job roles, however, where you might say, look, I would really like to use sort of the client agent to pull all that information down, and I could work offline a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple different approaches we've seen for people using like a terminal server, remote desktop capabilities, virtual desktops, VDI solutions. And there's people that are doing the full on, hey, I sort of subscribe to these topics and I pull down all the documents, maybe like a Google Drive or offline files, I can actually cache those things locally to my laptop. And then I don't have to keep going back to the server.
Yeah.
And that can be disruptive when you have versioning with latency, because if you have multiple people actually collaborating remotely, who gets the latest update, who locks a file, that kind of stuff, that can be painful. And so the Squid stuff is mostly, I'll say, for reading. When it comes to writing the bytes, you're still having to go back across the wire for the most part, because most of us are never going to have a $15,000 or $30,000 Cisco web app accelerator sitting in our basement. I mean, I might, just for fun. You can find them on eBay, the older ones now anyway. I bet Pitar has some. Pitar's got one of like everything in his basement.
I think he probably has
old
5
Shunra,
of them.
Old Shunra box. Yeah. And he's just running Linux on 2 of them, which is fine. But that's the difference, Brian, is to look at collaboration. And if you're, let's say you're an account manager, or in your case, like you're working as an SE, you have specific accounts, and you might be like, all right, I'm going to subscribe to my top 20 accounts that I'm working with in the next week or so, and download all the information locally. And then you're fairly portable. If you're like, hey, I have to go out, I have to be flexible with my hours, working from home with kids, then you can almost be offline and still be productive.
Right.
And Squid or Varnish is just one of the things, especially for an IT geek, to be like, all right, I can make this easier and faster for myself.
Yeah. Now I think I can extend. I have 2 ideas that I wanted to throw at you all. I think the first one is pretty obviously a yes, right? Extending on James's idea of the worldwide training, right, for customers. Well, I mean, I think with a lot of people working from home now, you're going to be having a lot of your yearly or bi-yearly events remote, right? I know even in my job, we have our sales kickoff coming up, which was going to be somewhere. Now that's going to be all remote. There might be trainings that you're doing remotely internally, within your own enterprise organization. You have different kind of trainings, different sort of events going on that multiple users are going to have to be on. So that would be, and if you are an organization like, where I'm from, you have people all over the world, all over the United States, all over different countries. So either everyone is going to be coming back to your origin, wherever your servers are set up, to get this video, to get this content, to get the images and everything. Or in this kind of situation, what I'm thinking is you can set up Varnish servers geolocated towards where the bulk of your employees are situated. It's probably even easiest just to set them up using different nodes in one of the public cloud servers. Or again, you might already be using that. However, getting away from the detail, that would be a good use case for that, I think, right?
Absolutely. You could, in fact, coming from Austria, you could hop over to Detroit, and then off of Detroit, you could use that as a proxy for Mountain View, California. And you could hop and skip and jump all the way across the world with multiple tiers of cache in that case.
Yeah. Now the other one, which would be more of, for your regular everyday work, most people are probably connected to VPN, right? Now, some people's jobs, they can do a lot of stuff off VPN, and sometimes they have to be on VPN for everything. So I don't know if this one's going to work quite right, because you're still going to be going through the VPN unless there's a way to say get static content not on the VPN. I don't know. I don't think that works that way. But I was just thinking, for your regular everyday stuff where you're on the company portal, if you could do that, then it might work.
If you can set up your own routes not to go through the company VPN.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, I'm not talking about. I mean, even ours, right? Like if I'm on my phone, my company has the company security, but only certain components go through them. The rest of the stuff doesn't, right? So I'm talking more like if you're on your company portal.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to view, let's say you're going to view some of the content that you're going to want to have to be on the VPN for, but maybe all the borders, the headers, all this kind of the stupid stuff. If it doesn't need to be on VPN, I don't know if you can split on the domain, but I guess really if a VPN is in place and you have to go through the VPN, that means you're going to still have to go through that office VPN. I don't think that's going to help in that case, would it?
That is a lot. That's a lot tougher. Well, you could, if your VPN tunnel, if your IPsec VPN tunnel is in your router versus from your laptop. If it's from your laptop directly, then you're going to be bypassing any local HTTP proxy in favor of whatever your corporate proxy or gateway solution is to go out to the internet. But if you can set your IPsec VPN tunnel on your router and then set specific routes going to specific domains from any machine inside of your home, then you could in fact take advantage of a Squid proxy because the things that are not related to your domain could be going out on the internet, and even maybe training.dynatrace.com could be cached coming out of the IPsec VPN.
Yeah, but I think most people have.
You could.
I was just going to say, I think most people have soft VPNs on their laptop, software-based VPNs. However, though, that does take me back. I have multiple VPN points that I can connect to. I can connect to, one in California. I can connect to one in Detroit. I can connect to one in Massachusetts. I can connect to some in Europe. So if they did move content to, this is, I guess, another part of the question. Content to Varnish servers near those VPN points and then route it through. Yeah, I think it'd be a lot more set up, and only companies with good IT departments might be able to take advantage of that one. But I guess there's some way that it could be used, probably. Anyway, in terms of so I think we have probably companies using like consumer facing companies, right? Not corporate workspace place, but like you're going to a site, right? I would imagine Varnish is a lot more of a player, would be more of a player in that place, because you might be doing that private VPN, CDN. But I think it sounds like Squid is a little bit more for internal or personal type of setups.
Yeah, I find Squid is part of the IT infrastructure for managing access between domains. It could be domains of like test environments, dev environments, maybe a UAT environment. If there's security policies that are different between two different segments or sets of segments and domains, one has confidential data, one does not. And you might force things through like a DLP, which is sort of data loss prevention mechanism. And you could think of Squid as a way, because you can password protect it, you can control the routes, only traffic from your certain subnets can make it into that environment and vice versa out of that environment. So it is a control point. It's very popular with security. And from even knowing James's history, mentioning Varnish, it's one that I see more and more. There's a deployment of Varnish that lives in, say, what's the deployment? Anyway, you'll find Varnish deployed with an application configuration as part of the application topology, whereas you could have a Varnish node deployed like you would, like you said, in front of the web server. It could be much more application specific in terms of how it works.
And it's very common with Nginx that you'll see a Varnish in front of an Nginx server.
Right.
And then the Varnish node may actually be acting as the TLS accelerator for the entire site as well. And so it's completely transparent. It's got the certificate on it, and you're connecting to Varnish, and you never knew it was there.
Yeah, I will say, Brian, the only place I've ever seen like a person be able to have point-to-point VPN, like from their basement, from their internal router back to multiple offices, are with like the super empowered super engineers in the IT department of a company.
Dude, I've got a Cisco small business router. It does IPsec tunnels right out of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but to get permissions to do that in today's security realm is harder than it was years ago. I just think
permissions.
Don't go there.
No, never mind.
So most people won't. It is really nice. I work on a team where we have people, one of the main things just last week that showed up in our meeting was like, is there any way we could allow the routes between these two different VPN endpoints so we don't have to disconnect, reconnect, disconnect, reconnect, disconnect, reconnect? It's exactly the same issue, right? We're stuck on client-side VPN.
Yeah.
And Squid and Varnish doesn't really help you in those situations from a performance perspective. That's
Yeah.
more of a understanding network topology kind of thing.
All right. So I think
there is one interesting use of Squid that we haven't covered, which is there are cases inside of application architectures where you need to cache for a period of time. And I've seen situations where Akamai has been used as a cache node inside of application architecture, like between between two app servers, between an app server and a web server, things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really efficient because you're routing out and then routing back. If you have Squid that you can just deploy as a Docker or Kubernetes image, then you can use its capabilities as kind of a web multi-proxy for multiple nodes very effectively to cache an entire infrastructure as calls are being made between pieces of an application archorchitecture.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's say
keep that in mind.
Let's say you have like a very slow rate of change on a selection of JSON that gets pushed into an app tier. You could have a cron job that updates that JSON once an hour and then pushes it out to an array of Squid servers, and all the apps, nobody talks to the database anymore. They just talk to the Squid to get their JSON. Mm-hmm. And so that's one way to do offloading. And, there's other caching mechanisms out there like Hibernate. So you could see those living on the back end of an app server. So they don't have to go to the database and make those round trips if the database is overloaded. Lots of different options to think about how close you are in the app versus how distributed you are across the infrastructure.
So then, James, if we go back to the last episode, it really doesn't sound like you have to do anything new or special for these two. It's just that it comes down to, again, knowing if they're present, where they are, and how they're being used, and making sure that your tests are going to exercise them properly. And as you mentioned last time, if you have expirations and all this kind of stuff, make sure they're living up to them. And if you're not putting expirations on there or making them so they're not staying cached, you have it sent to, is it even possible to send something to Varnish or Squid but not actually cache it? But making sure it's doing
so it's default. The default mode is to respect the cache headers that are already in place. But if you have an app that is totally busted from that perspective, you can set. That's where the ability to set your own rules comes into play, either from a particular source, or as a particular class, MIME type or something of that nature, that you could simply change the policy for that item.
Right. So it sounds like we can just say the same thing, find out what's being used, how it's supposed to be operating, and make sure your test accounts for that, and then confirm that it's operating in the way that it's supposed to be operating, which is kind of what we covered in the last episode. So I don't think we need to. So if you're curious about the discussions on different ways of caching tests, not caching tests, testing cache and considerations and things to do, check out the last episode of Ask Perf Bytes, because James and I went pretty deep into that. But Mark, I don't know if there's any insights you wanted to share on any of that. I'm sure you haven't heard the episode yet because it hasn't aired yet. Well, by the time this one airs, that one aired.
I think it was a great episode.
One of the best ever.
I thought it was wonderful. And I think your insights were absolutely appropriate, and I stand by them 100%.
I was at a conference after that one.
It was much better than Cats. I want to listen to it again and again and again and again.
Well, I was at a conference after it aired, and somebody came up to me and they said, "Sir, that's a great episode." And I was like, "I know a lot about caching. I'm probably an expert on caching." Anyhow.
Oh, wow.
Pretty good,
that's
right?
Great.
Yeah.
So nice.
Thanks, sir. We've talked, we've joked. Is there anything on the topics of Squid or Varnish we haven't touched upon yet that you two all wanted to make sure people knew about?
Squid is available as part of many distributions for the WRT, the router images. And it's very popular as part of distributions to build your own in-house router and things of that nature. Just turn it on, play with it. You're not going to harm anything in this case.
Yeah.
You can always turn it off or blast the cache if something is not coming through properly.
The one tip I'll give you is that if you start playing around with Squid in order to get around your security department's InfoSec constraints, be prepared to get a call and have a lengthy conversation as to how ingenious you are with some of this routing technology.
And how you violated those policies that you signed on to in January that you agreed to on your annual security training.
Well, I just got tired of opening up a connection to this other machine to get through this other machine to get into the lab. So I just set up 2 Squid servers so I could stay on my desktop and record a script. Sorry.
And then I'm going to set all my passwords to password to make it easier for me to remember.
Hey, Mark, what are these ports open here? Oh, nothing at all. Just part of my testing. That worked for about 3 months. And then they finally came back and were like, yeah, I think we need you to shut those down.
Mark.
Yep.
Mark.
Yeah. So be buyer beware. Deployer beware, I'll say.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fun. I might have to, I'll see if I have any free time. Just figure out even where to.
Hey, do we get to do the show? Do we get to do the show closing with you?
Of course, we're about to do it. Well, go on and do it then.
Everything is fantastic.
Was that Folk?
Yeah, it is.
Sponsor of our show. Thank you, Mr. Folk.
That was Mr. Folk.
It was very quiet. I don't know if people heard it, but yes. Well,
everything is fantastic.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen who are listening, we really appreciate your patience with us. Today's show is brought to you by Folk Consulting Services. Folk Consulting Services has more than 15 years of experience and is a high-caliber, industry-leading services provider of application performance testing services, monitoring, and management with a strong background in software quality assurance. Folk Consulting has the greatest consultants in the world, and they love growing their customer-focused relationships. Find out more at www.folkconsulting, that's F-O-U-L-K, consulting.com. Once again, thanks to everyone listening today. And Brian, thank you for sending us the question. We hope that you learned a little bit from the response. I know I did, and I know you did. So big thanks to Mark Tomlinson and James Pulley for helping with today's question. Make sure to check out Perf Bites and News of the Damned. If you have any questions for Ask Perf Bites, please send your questions to ask@perfbites.com or follow me on Twitter at AskPerfBites or Emperor Wilson, or you can leave a voicemail at
77 load perf. That's 775-623-7373 in the headquarters town of fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada.
Operators are standing by.
Thank you. You can always tune in to Ask Perf Bites on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, Overcast, TuneIn, etc. If you like performance podcasts, make sure to check out Pure Performance, which I co-host with Andy Grabner.
Maybe I should say that.
Say which one.
Do you want me to say that?
Sure. Go ahead. Take it, Mark.
Hang on. 1 second.
I am Brian Wilson. Thank you for listening.
No, but I'm
sorry. I didn't.
Bronx cheers, and as always, best of luck in your performance efforts.
If you like performance podcasts, be sure to check out Pure Performance with Brian and Andy Grabner.
Oh, at first I thought you were trying to do an impersonation of me. Can you try that again?
I did. That was my best.
Do that one as me.
If you like performance podcasts, be sure to check out Pure Performance, which I co-host with Andy Grabner.
Wow. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Good? I have no idea.
That was amazing. I can't tell the difference.
Let me do it with I have a southern accent like James. Here it is. You ready? If you like performance podcasts, be sure to check out Pure Performance, which I co-host with Andy Grabner, y'all.
That's amazing.
See, I put y'all on the end. It makes it southern.
It sure does.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I can do it as a Minnesotan as well. Here. If you like performance podcasts, make sure to check out Pure Performance, which I co-host with Andy Grabner, You know.
You want to hear me do? Can you do it as Can you do it as the Canadian?
If you like performance podcasts, make sure to check out Per Performance, which I co-host with Andy Grabner.
Very good. All right, thank you, everybody. Really
Thank
appreciate
you, Brian.
listening. Thank you, James and Mark.
Thank you, Brian.
And hopefully,
Brian,
Thank
thank
you,
you for
Brian.
your question.
Yes.
Brian, I hope you got good information from Brian on this podcast. Thank
yes,
you.
it was
I sure
smart.
learned a lot.
Yes, and I hope our listeners did
I'm
too.
putting in a Squid proxy down in hell.
Ah, that'd be interesting.
Well, he's
Very
only got
interesting.
56K dial-up, so
There's
it's probably going to
there's
be really effective there.
There's a lot of torture porn that we need to cache down here.
It suddenly went there again with Mark. It always goes
Well,
in that.
you know.
It always goes in that one place.
We always been quarantined, and the internet only exists because of porn.
Yes. Well, no, that's not what this started with. It
That's
developed.
definitely wrong.
All right, let's wrap this up, people, before the FCC comes after me, because they have control over any of this. All right, thank you everyone for
Don't.
listening. We
They
will
don't at all.
No.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll be back next for the next episode. We really appreciate you. Bye.